Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Authenticity in Action. I am Audrey Kramer with Audrey Kramer Coaching, and I love getting to talk to people who are just living out their dreams and doing the thing that they have always wanted to do. And I am so excited today to have Coach Jacob Hicks on the call with us. So, welcome, Jacob.
Thanks so much for having me. Glad to be here.
Yeah. Do you go by Jake or Jacob? Your website says Jacob, so I want to make sure people are calling you by the right name.
Is it either way? I mean, usually I introduce myself as Jacob, but I don't really care. So
Don't call you late for dinner, right? I
yeah,
think
that's
so.
right. That's right.
Awesome. Well, you've been coaching for a little while now and getting into the whole speaking thing.
Mhm.
So I was just curious because obviously this isn't something you've done for your entire career. So how
Yeah.
did you decide this is the thing that is calling to you and this is what you want to do with your life?
Well, it's kind of funny. The more and more I've gotten into this, the more I've realized that to some degree I have been doing this all my life pretty much. I mean, I've always been really driven by helping people, helping them figure out what the things are, what they need to do, helping them navigate, a difficult situation or something they're just not terribly familiar with.
Mhm.
I mean, I realized that early on in my sales career because I've been in sales for I don't know 10, 12 years now. Um, back when I first kind of started, I was selling suits, and I realized that I mean, I really kind of fell in love with the whole sales process then because I got to to some degree determine what I made, but
Mm-hmm.
then I also got to help people, particularly men, navigate the world of fashion, which we are generally not that well versed in, but help them figure out how to do that and how to wear things. And I mean, I had folks coming from, I mean, hours away just to come and talk to me, which was a really cool
Wow.
experience.
Yeah, that's awesome.
um but I mean, even on a personal level, a lot of my friends would come to me, and if they had like a business idea, or hey, I'm thinking about changing jobs, changing careers, we would talk through it, and I always really really loved that. And that's what I've loved about coaching so far, is getting to really do a deep dive with somebody one on one and figure out, well, what makes them tick, what helps them get to where they want to go, and help them drive towards those goals. I mean, that's super, super satisfying.
Yeah. I love that you said, this is something that even though you haven't officially done it for forever, you've kind of been doing it forever. And I think that's something that a lot of people miss when they have dreams is like, oh, when it's the right time, I can do the thing. But there are small steps that you can take pretty much at any time to help you be set up for success, whether that's practicing a skill or networking or making connections. So I'm
Yeah.
really glad that you said that.
I mean, 100%. And I always tell people, particularly in my coaching, I mean, I was even talking to somebody today about it. Like my kind of first suggestion, if somebody like wants to pursue something, whether it be, professionally, as a career or as a job or as a business, or just something, like learning to play piano, or I want to read more, or whatever the case might be,
Mhm.
is I always recommend people, I mean, start small, figure out, like, if you want to read more, maybe you say, hey, I'm going to read for, 5 minutes, every day, but figure out what that limit is and stick to it. And I always suggest people, like, hey, let's say if you're going to start reading for, 5 or 10 minutes every day, go maybe like 4 minutes or 8 minutes instead of, because even you know that you can get all the way to that goal. You want to make sure that you're still hungry for it tomorrow. You're not burning yourself out really on.
Yeah, that's a huge thing that people are running into, especially in the side hustle culture of like, okay, I have to do this outside of work and I'm going to put everything into it because I want it to work out. And it is, like you said, really easy to go, well, now I don't have any energy left for that thing. And it used to be something I really enjoyed. Now I can do nothing.
Yeah. Yeah. But I mean, even if you start a business that you love, I mean, there's always going to be aspects that you don't.
Hmm.
So making sure that the aspects you do love don't become just another part of the job where you feel like, oh man, I got to get up and do this thing again. I mean, that's really, really critical.
Yeah. How have you found ways to kind of keep things fresh and still enjoy the things that you enjoyed doing years ago?
Well, I mean, really, I mean, finding like my limits has been really, really critical, because I mean, well, especially in my 20s, I was really good at burning myself out.
Yeah.
I would run as fast as I could, as long as I could, and then I would get tired, and then I was like, oh, well, I guess that's over. So I mean, it's much more important, 'cause I mean, life, I mean, we say life is short, but life can be long. So
Mhm.
finding your limits and not pushing yourself too hard too often, I think, is really important. I mean, there's always going to be times in life where you have to get up and you have to grind, you have to work really hard and pull those, 10, 12, 14-hour days. But making sure that's more the exception than the rule, I think, is really important. At least it's been really important in my life.
Yeah.
but then also really giving myself grace has been really important too. And a big way, because I'm currently teaching myself to learn how to play piano.
Nice.
And for me, it's figuring out again where those limits are. Usually I try to push myself to practice at least 30 minutes a day.
Hmm.
But on those days where, the time just gets away from me or I'm not able to set aside the 30 minutes to actually get it done, it's still spending, a couple, 2, 3, 5 minutes just playing a song just for my enjoyment because that's really why I want to do it.
Yeah.
And understanding that, and even on those days where I don't get the full 30 minutes, understanding that, hey, that's okay. We can try again tomorrow.
Are there signs for you that you go, oh, if I keep doing this, this is bad? Like, do you notice like an attitude shift or something like physically that comes up? So, how do you identify burnout for yourself?
So for me, it's an avoidance. Um, like if whatever the thing is, like whether it be work or play, whatever the thing is I'm driving towards, when
Hmm.
I notice that I start feeling like I don't want to do that thing, and I start trying to like either I get on my phone too much, I'm watching just stupid videos, or I just find other things to do. That
Yeah.
that lets me know that hey, I need to take a break, and that's all right to take a break, but then it's okay to get back to it as well. And like I said, like figuring out those limits, whether it be like the 15 minutes of reading a day and only doing 12, like that's
Hmm.
okay because we're building up our muscles. Is really what we're doing is we're practicing the thing to get better at the thing, and ultimately we can do the thing more.
Yeah. I saw somebody on Facebook in one of the groups that I'm in. They actually posted like a really clever tactic of,
Mm.
I have this list of things to do and I don't want to do them. So I create another list of things to do. So when I'm avoiding this list, I'm still getting things done on this list. I'm like, oh, that's really interesting.
But I also think it's really important too. I kind of think of it as like the vacation effect. Like,
Hmm.
I mean, studies have shown where like half of the benefit of vacation isn't actually being on the vacation, it's anticipating the vacation.
Oh,
So
yeah.
building in breaks that you know are coming or little rewards for yourself. Like I always tell my clients all the time, like you got to celebrate all the wins. But
Hmm.
that doesn't necessarily mean you need to go out for an extravagant dinner or go on a vacation or buy a new car. That can
Yeah,
just be taking 5 minutes to get out of your house and go for a walk when the sun's shining. That can just be like, hey, I got a brand new book. I'm super excited about it. So I'm gonna spend half an hour reading a new chapter. Like little things can help build up that resistance and that anticipation to get things done.
that's awesome. I love it. I wanted to ask you because you've been posting a lot on social media about using failures as stepping stones. And
Mhm.
especially when you're taking on a new skill or pursuing a passion, it's really easy either in burnout or just little things that come up to make those mistakes. So I was hoping you could talk a little bit about that because I know you've been posting about it a lot recently and I've really appreciated it.
Yeah. So what I've really realized in my life is kind of regardless of what we're doing, mindset is really kind of the key piece.
Hmm.
Sun Tzu said that, failures like we win in our mind first, then we go to battle. So, I mean, if you show up assuming that you're not going to do well, then you probably won't, and at least
Hmm.
not as well as you could. But I think it really kind of comes down to our perspective. I think perspective is really, really, really key. So when we start a new skill or start pursuing a new thing, don't see it as either do this well or as a failure. See it as all as an experiment. Because when we're experimenting, maybe things didn't go quite as we expected, but we'll always learn. And as we always
Yeah.
learn, then we can always do better. So, I mean, I think failure is the biggest teacher. I mean, another way to say it is is experience. Like
Hmm.
if we're running as a little kid and we fall down or we touch a hot stove, then we know not to touch that stove again, right? So, I mean, I think it really kind of all comes down to like how we perceive it is really kind of how we perceive our reality is really kind of what defines our reality. So if we see it as an experiment, just something we're trying something out, hey, it didn't go quite as well. I think it's really, really important. But I think the other key piece of this, kind of the other side of this coin that we don't talk about nearly enough, I don't think, is identity. So
Hmm.
I think, for example, if we are trying to, like I said, learn the piano, for example, right? I mean, I'm learning piano, I'm doing okay, but I'm hitting a lot of wrong notes. My timing is kind of wonky. Like things just aren't going quite as I would like, right? I wanted to just like download it in my brain that I can just do it and not have to worry about it, right?
Yeah.
But I think the identity piece is that even though I'm hitting wrong notes, that doesn't mean that I'm not worth it. So even
Yeah.
as we try things, if they don't go as well, that doesn't define who you are, and don't let it. I think it's a real Western idea is that we are defined by our work, and
Hmm.
our work doesn't have to define us only if we let it. So if our work doesn't go as well, that could be a mistake. Maybe it causes us to, move down the rankings. We end up getting fired or something like that. But that's okay. That's just, part of the journey. Another piece of the perspective thing that I always talk about too with my clients is I learned this early on when I was in retail sales. I'm selling suits because anybody that ever been in retail of any kind knows how rough it can be, and people come in
Yeah.
not always treating us the best.
Yeah.
But I started asking myself a question early on when I was selling suits, and I would ask myself, "Is this a story that I'm going to tell?" Somebody comes in and treats me like crap. I ask myself, "I'm sure I'm upset. Is this a story I'm going to tell?" And most of the time, the answer is no. It might be like a crappy day, so I come home and I, tell my friends or whomever that, "Oh, this is a crappy day. This guy said this thing to me." But is it a story I'm gonna tell tomorrow? Is it a story I'm gonna tell next week? Is it a story I'm
Hmm.
gonna tell next year? And a lot of the time, most of the time even, I would say, it's not.
That's crazy. I love what you're saying about identity and the belief of the work that you do basically equates to who you are, and it doesn't. It's just kind of a piece of the puzzle. And when you were talking about taking those breaks, I know for some people that's really hard
Mhm.
because we don't consider rest as productive, and that kind of gets us in trouble, right? It's like I heard this thing somewhere where it's like the Star Trek Enterprise, the ship can't run at Mach or warp speed all the time because if it does, the
Yep.
parts will break down and then it won't run. So you can't actually be at 100% capacity all the time. And a lot of people just have trouble saying, I'm going to sit down, I'm going to be on the couch, I'm going to scroll through TikTok or whatever. And that's fine for a short amount of time. Now, obviously, if you're doing it
Mhm.
all day, every day, that's like you said, one of those flags of, hey, what's going on here? Am I in burnout? Do I need to take a step back? But as far as rest being productive, I'm curious what thoughts you have on that.
This is a lesson I've had to learn the hard way too. Like I said, especially in my 20s, I ran myself to the ground about every 6 months or so. And I've realized, especially as I've
Like
gotten older,
clockwork, right?
yeah, yep, I got really good at it. The timing was always on point. It's almost a national holiday, right? But I've realized that, you have to take breaks. You have to let your mind rest. You have to reevaluate sometimes. For me
Hmm.
personally, I've realized that I can work pretty hard for about 5 or 6 days straight, working, 8, 10 hours ish, kind of depending, so, like lunch and things in there.
Yeah.
But I have to have at least 1 day gap in between. And what's been really, really good for me is I do my best to make sure I'm not doing anything I don't really, really have to. So,
Hmm.
like, for example, Monday through Friday, I'm working, right? I'm, putting out content, I'm, splitting videos or, whatever I'm doing, dealing with clients, all that kind of good stuff. On Saturday, I will do some of that stuff. And I'll also do a majority, if not all of my cleaning, my laundry, my apartment, everything. And on Sunday is my day of rest. I go to church with my mom, I relax, I watch some football, and I just kind of zone out and do nothing as much as I possibly can. And allowing yourself that reset is absolutely critical. And so many people, I think it's, at least based on my research, I think it's the prevalence of perfectionism, and I think it's an anxiety response. And
Okay.
what I've noticed is that we need to build give ourselves the tools and the permission to combat that. Meaning that perfection isn't the ultimate goal, because perfection doesn't mean that you are perfect, right? If you want to get to where you want to go, 80% of the way there is almost always good enough. Because other
Yeah.
people that might be, in the same industry as you are may not be going nearly that far. So if you go 80% of the way, most of the time is going to be absolutely fine.
I think, perfectionism, like you're not going to be perfect, and that kind of being an anxiety response and like I just have to have everything in the right place and look exactly so. That's been a big struggle with me growing up because it was
Mm,
always, you bring home the report card and mom's reading it. Oh, you went from an A to an A minus. Like, what's that about? And so
right.
we kind of learn these things from parents, from teachers, from other kids that, like, oh, if you're not showing up as your highest level all the time, that's not good enough. And it kind of puts in us this need to prove to other people and especially to ourselves that I can go and be perfect at things. And if it's not perfect, it's not good enough. So I appreciate you touching on that.
Well,
That's
and it's so
important.
interesting you say that about the report card because I mean, really what we're talking about here isn't isn't perfection, it's perfect results. Meaning like
Yeah.
if you go into school and you're terrible at math, which some people struggle with math, right? Or
Mm-hmm.
science or whatever the topic is, and you get your B's or your C's, just because that's not the best possible grade doesn't mean that you didn't try your hardest, right?
Yeah.
And not letting those results define you because like, hey, I went out and I did my best and I studied hard and I got a B.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing wrong with that.
I wish we could embrace that more. That's such a, and like 100% today, it may look completely different from giving 100% tomorrow. And so, like you said, just give yourself some grace and flexibility for that.
Well, and I mean, what I always tell people too is we talk about giving 100%, right?
Mhm.
Meaning giving your all. But I think we have to talk about the percentages a little bit more. Meaning that, you know, tomorrow I might wake up super well rested, had a great night's sleep, so that I can, you know, ground and pound and I can get all this kind of stuff done over the course of my 8 or whatever hours. But I might sleep like crap tonight. I might, you know, toss and turn all night long, meaning I wake up not feeling very good. And maybe I only have 40%. If I give that 40%, then I still gave 100%.
Yeah.
And people don't think about that. And usually if we only have 40% and we push up to 50, 60, 70%, that's when we start experiencing burnout and start giving more than we have.
Man, this is like all of these life lessons, right? They just need to be published. You tell me you're writing a book and then you're going to put out a book.
It's it's in the back of my mind, but we're not there quite yet.
Nice. Yeah, books are hard. Speaking of which, so especially as like coach, speaker, author, or really any entrepreneur, as you're kind of learning how you want to apply yourself, it's oftentimes that you have to learn so many skills outside
Mhm.
of what you originally thought you had to do. Like
Yes.
Lacey, my friend, she's an author. She put out a couple of books. She's writing a trilogy. And I did an interview with her and we were talking about, oh, well, okay, you're the author, but also you have to be the marketer and also you have to be the content creator. And also you need to learn the publishing process. And also you need to network and all of this thing. And it's just a lot of extra stuff that you don't really think about. So
Mhm.
I'm curious, like, what have the main challenges been for you as you've decided, okay, I'm diving in coach speaker full time. Eventually I'll be an author. What has kind of challenged you along the way and what have you learned from that?
Honestly, my biggest challenges have been technology. Like, you know, I'm a generation where I feel like everybody just assumes that we know everything about every computer related device. And I mean, I'm reasonably good at stuff, but I'm not a website designer. Never have
Mm-hmm.
been, really don't want to be. But like that's kind of a necessary thing because I mean, I've got a website. I mean, I don't like I'm not at the position yet where I feel like I can just pay somebody gobs of money to take care of all that stuff for me all the time. So, I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I've had to spend, I mean, hours at a time trying to just figure out like one little thing. But I think it's really, really critical because I'm not ever going to be the best website designer in the world, right? Like, that's not my passion. That's not what I want to be doing. But it gives me the skill and the understanding, more importantly. So, whenever I am at to the point where I can outsource some of those things, then I know kind of what I'm asking for and how difficult it might be. It's also given me a lot of confidence to know that I can get some of this stuff figured out on my
Yeah.
own, right? And I mean, just what, 2 days ago, because I'm doing this, right? I'm podcasting with more folks, very digitally, right, anymore. And my camera on my laptop was not very good, and I wanted to upgrade some of those things, and I got, like, a new mic and, like, that kinda stuff. So I figured out how to, like I don't know what you even call it, I guess. You, like, plug it all into this one thing that plugs into my computer that does all of it at once.
Oh, cool.
And it took me, like, several hours to figure that out and a couple of trips to Best Buy.
Oh, I need one more thing. Just one
Yeah,
more
yeah.
thing. Okay,
Yeah,
I
I didn't know
forgot
I
the
needed
thing.
this. But I mean, I'm a big believer in self-reliance. So in figuring out some of this stuff, not that you need to, again, we're not shooting for perfect, we're
Mm-hmm.
shooting for working, right? And then we
Mm-hmm.
can refine along the way. So
Yeah. I'm curious your take on the importance of having other people around you? Because I think
Mm.
you told me like someone helped you design the site and then you're maintaining and doing upkeep and all of that. So that plus going to Best Buy to get this equipment figure out, how have other people helped you to be successful?
So, I mean, I think the people around us really will define our success, both in the present and moving forward, generally speaking. I'm a big believer, always forget who said it, but I think we're the sum average of the 5 people we spend the most time with.
Mm-hmm.
Meaning, if you're, hanging out with millionaires, you'll probably be the sixth. But if you're hanging around with bums that sit on the couch all day and watch TV, then you'll probably be the sixth, right? So, I mean, I started out working with a coach. I mean, Mitch Matthews, you know him too. I mean, he was really, really great, helped me get started and everything. I was lucky enough to kind of trade services with a guy who does marketing.
Oh, nice.
He was starting his business, I was starting my business, so we traded services. He helped me kind of get some of that stuff figured out. I am not an artsy guy. I'm not a designer kind of guy. It doesn't make sense to me. I can get something put out. It's not going to look great, but he really helped me kind of get stuff off the ground and gave me some good templates to get things flowing so that I don't have to like think about that. I can just pump out good content. And then, I mean, friends and family too have been really, really great. I mean, making sure that you have people that, if not understand what you're doing, at least support you in your endeavors.
Yeah. This is a big concept that I've kind of developed into cheerleaders and champions. So like the
Yep.
cheerleaders being the people that support you, and then the champions are the ones going out there and like spreading the good word about all of the things that you're doing and getting
Yeah.
other
Yep.
people on your team. So that's really cool. So you were talking about bartering services with people and hey, I'm working on this, you're working on that, let's trade. And for a
Mm.
lot of entrepreneurs, this can be initial investment of a business is oftentimes difficult. So can you share a little bit about one, your experience with that, and two, any surprise things that have happened that came your way that were good things, we'll say, that you didn't expect?
I mean, so I think the scariest part for some people, I tend to be a little more on the aggressive side with this kind of thing, but it's just asking the question and being okay being told no.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, I mean, like I said, for me, I mean, I put a lot of stuff on social media. It's not my forte, at least I don't think so. So finding somebody that was already kind of doing that or knows that world better than I do and understand what works and what doesn't work really,
Mm-hmm.
really helped me kind of figure out what I want my social media to really look like. How to
Yeah.
make it as systematized as possible, meaning that I like to focus on the actual like what I kind of think of the meat and potatoes, like the actual words that you're reading, like on my blog or on my Facebook or whatever, and
Mm-hmm.
not so much with the graphics and all that other stuff. So I mean, I found a guy who was starting his business, and he said like, "Hey, we're both working on this. Would it make sense for us to work together?" And then he said yes. And I don't do that a ton, but for certain strategic things that I feel like I need and will help me get my business to the next level, then I'm definitely, I mean, willing to try it. Like I said, if they tell me no, then that's okay.
Yeah. I think that's another thing too, where like if people tell you no, going back to that identity piece, they're saying no to you personally and not no to your idea, but that's not usually the case. It's we never see what's going on behind the scenes. They may not have the time or the energy, or they may feel like they're not the best resource for that. And so oftentimes we can take that really personally. And I think thinking of the big picture of things is really helpful.
Well, I mean, this is a sales thing for sure. I mean, any entrepreneurs out there listening, I mean, sales has to be a part of your business. It doesn't have to be your favorite piece of it, but it does have to be a part of it. Um, and I mean, that's what I talk with my folks all the time is like putting the systems in place. So you can do what I call selling without selling, meaning that you meet somebody at a networking event or somebody comes to your website, you capture their contact information, their email or whatever. How are you staying in front of them and realize that you aren't bugging them if you're providing value is really, really important, meaning that you're not just saying like, "Hey, do you wanna buy this stuff for me? I'm still selling this stuff. You wanna buy this stuff? Do you wanna buy this stuff?"
Yeah,
No, I
nobody likes
don't.
that person.
Yes, you wanna be the used car salesman, right? But just like sending them information that you feel like is relevant and helpful. I mean, as long as you're doing that, then it's not a loss ever because they're just gonna keep listening to you even if they aren't responding to you.
Yeah, that's a huge one. You post things or email and you hear crickets and it's like, am I on the right track here? It'd be really nice to know if I'm actually helping people.
Right, right. Well, and what I there's a book that I read back in retail, so it would have been, I don't know, 10 years ago or something now, called The Four Disciplines of Execution. I mean, I'm a huge, huge believer. I love what they have to say in there, and they talk about lead versus lag measures, meaning that, for example, we were talking about like sending emails, right?
Mhm.
So I cannot control how many people respond to my email, but I can control how many times I email somebody.
Yeah.
And depending on which one of those things you're tracking will actually really determine your success, and it'll give you a better sense of control because you are focusing on the things you can control, which are the
Hmm.
lead measures, how many emails you're sending, as opposed to the lag measures, which are things you cannot control, which is like email response.
Yeah. As you were talking about, sending out emails and providing value and all of that, I was thinking about how some people are very interested in making other people happy and they provide value in the sense of people pleasing. So, no
Mm.
matter what it is that you want, I'm going to design my content to fit that. And then there are other people that are more, I have a message that I want to share and this is my voice, and the right people will come along at the right time. And so for people who are kind of stuck in that people pleasing mode and they don't ever feel like they get to be themselves, how would you encourage them to embrace their authenticity and using their own voice?
So, um, for me, this was kind of a big revelation for me a few years ago. So, I think it comes down to confidence because it's what's really driving you. Simon Sinek, who, I mean, he's a huge speaker now, but
Yeah,
he's got a
huge
great
fan.
book. Yeah, so am I. He's got a great book. Have you read it? Start with Why.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's really, really important. Like understanding why you're doing what you're doing,
Hmm.
and if the answer is because I want to please people, because I want people to like me, that's okay. But I think that needs a little tweaking and some self reflection. Because I think of confidence not necessarily as like, oh, I feel really good about what I'm doing, but more about self possession. And when I say self possession, I think of it as I accept where I am, understanding that I'm not where I want to be, but believe that I can get there, if that makes sense. And I think a lot
Yeah.
of people can struggle with that. And people pleasing, when we're talking about like sales related things, you're not ever going to please everybody. Most of the time, you're going to piss people off, right? That's okay.
Yeah.
But I think it's early on in sales, what I've noticed is that those early sales folks, I mean, they can be, especially if they're young, they tend to be really, really hungry. They want to go out and get it. They want to, make a bunch of money and whatever. And that's fine. There's nothing necessarily wrong with that. But usually the attitude that comes with that, and I have experienced it in myself, is that I want to sell anything to anyone all the time. And that's an okay place to start. But as you mature in your role, you realize that no, you don't want to sell anything to everyone all the time because not everyone deserves what you have to offer or even wants it. So
Mhm.
understanding that you want to find the quality business that makes sense for you and for your message is going to be really, really key. Just because somebody can come in and drop, thousands of dollars in your lap doesn't mean that that makes sense for the life that you want to live.
Yeah. How did you develop that confidence? Like, were you just always confident in how you were selling, regardless of what it was? Or was that like a lesson over time that you learned how to be confident with yourself? What did that look like?
So, the answer is no. I was not always confident, and
What?
honestly, I mean, I when I first started in sales back in my early 20s, I was really shy. I'm like talking to people very much, and I still consider myself an introvert. Like I like being left alone at home. Let me read my books, watch my shows, whatever I'm doing. I'm okay. I'm okay being by myself.
Yeah.
But I mean, I suppose it just kind of came over time with a lot of self reflection. I mean, I think the self acceptance piece is really, 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 really important. Um, and having the confidence to ask yourself some of those harder questions, saying like, hey, I'm not as, thin or as fit as I would like to be, or my business isn't where I want it to be yet. Like understanding that and accepting that and knowing that even though you are still figuring things out, you are still driving towards that and accepting it, I think is really, really, really important. People, I mean, I think self-acceptance is key.
Yeah, I think too a lot of times I want people to look back and look at their progress, because we
Mm,
forget to do that. We get so
yeah.
focused on the task at hand, and then I'm not where I want to be yet, and this is not good, and it's not working. If you turn around and look, like, you have made so much progress, and completely different person from 1 2 years ago, 1 2 months ago, depending on what that is.
Yeah. So I mean, I love that. I mean, I'm a huge believer. I think we should celebrate every win, whether, like I said, I think I said before, like whether it be, going for a walk or a fancy dinner. I mean, just finding those small wins and taking the time to sit down and say, okay, what went well? What did I do well? It can be so easy to say like, oh, well, I talked to this person, I said this weird thing, and I said something I shouldn't have, and I screwed up
And
this
that goes on
call.
the
Like,
hamster wheel, and then
yes, yep, yep. So, I mean, finding those thoughts to counteract. Well, I mean, it's like you're fighting against yourself a little bit, right? Like I kind of think of it as like confrontation, where
Mhm,
it's like, I have an issue with you. You said something I didn't like, so I need to sit down and talk to you about it, right? But
mhm.
I think it's arguably just as critical, if not more critical, to have those inner confrontations too. To say like, hey, because I was hurt in the past, now I'm acting like this. I mean, a lot of people don't even take that time to figure out those things and understanding what's driving you and what's causing you to behave in a certain way. I mean, like I said, I think it's super critical.
Yeah. When you were talking about inner confrontations, I really like the concept of that. I know a lot of times people will just kind of stuff down things and
Yep.
not even be aware that that's a part of them. Have you had instances where, you're doing something and then all of a sudden your brain goes, "Oh, wait a minute, that's where this is coming from."
Yeah. So, like I've realized, in my life that I tend to be a little on the isolationist side. There's a book, I'm not sure if you would have read it. It's called The Challenger Sales Model.
Okay.
It's a sales book, but I think it's anybody that you don't have to be a salesman to read it. It just talks about how you interact with people.
Yeah.
It's very, very data driven, but they talk about like the different sales styles, personality types that typically tend to gravitate towards that. And I am the lone wolf generally, meaning that I like to just do my thing, leave me alone. I'm hitting my numbers, like don't talk to me, right? And and I've realized that that's just not a very good way to live. So I mean, like finding those things like in your own life and having the confidence, and like I'm a huge believer in therapy, and I don't think anybody should do this on their own necessarily, because I mean sometimes some people have some really heavy stuff
Hmm.
that, I mean, just doing it by yourself, you don't have to. And I love what Simon Sinek has to say about this. Like he talks about like how like if you need help reaching out to somebody, you're being vulnerable with them, right? But you're also honoring them because it allows them to be down in the mud with you.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
so I mean, I know in my life like it's been hard. And I mean, it probably always will be. I always have certain tendencies, but just finding those things and knowing that I can consciously choose not to do them, even though I might be uncomfortable, is okay.
That's awesome. So you decided to take the plunge full time into coaching and speaking.
Yep.
And just personally for me, like, that would be a super scary thought to just say, you know what, I'm diving in. And I get it, because at a certain point you have to do that and believe in yourself enough to do that. So what was the thought process like from, working a regular job, kind of building everything up on the side, and then when you made that commitment of, hey, I'm doing this full time, what was that like for you?
So, um, it was fine, I guess. As crazy as it sounds. I've been, gosh, how do I explain this? So I'm a preparing guy. Like I like to figure out how to make things work. I like to be organized and all that kind of good stuff, right? But probably arguably one of the biggest defining characteristics of who I am is that I don't I say, I don't know, kind of a little glib thing that I say is that um I'm not fearless, but I'm not fearful. Like I'm a faith driven guy. Like I'm, big into my faith and everything. That's really important to me. But
Mhm.
the whole thing with like the fear and the anxiety really kind of started probably 10, 12 years ago, when I was in college still. And I had this just random epiphany when I was just chilling in my frat house watching TV, that I didn't want the reason that I didn't get to where I wanted to be in life to be that I had been afraid. So another way to say that is I don't want fear to control me. And the more and more I've reflected on that, like the more and more I believe it, just the idea that, I didn't ask this person this question or I didn't pursue this opportunity because I'm afraid, I'm worried, I'm anxious about this thing. Like the idea just pisses me off, frankly.
Yeah.
And I've realized that it's an interesting relationship that we have with like fear, because I think sometimes people can just come up in fear like a frog in a pot of boiling water, where we just
Hmm.
don't even realize we're getting more and more fear. But the other piece of this too is that I think bravery is a choice more than it's a feeling. And it's more a result of action. So like we can't be brave if we don't experience fear. And most of the time when we are brave, we are still feeling afraid.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't know if that really answers your question, but I'm just like, I mean, my job at the time was really upsetting me. I hated it for a long time. I was like ready for something else. And I was like, screw it. Like if I'm gonna try this, and if it doesn't work, then I can, find something else. But I mean, this feels right. So why not
Yeah.
try?
There's a lot to be said for this feels right to me because there are certain jobs or hobbies at a certain point you're going to go, no, I don't want this for myself. And this other thing looks really great. And I'm just going to go for it. And if it works out, great. And if it doesn't work out, at least I followed what my heart was saying and not just staying in this place because it feels comfortable.
Yeah, I mean, it's like we were talking about before. Like life is long and life is short, depending on what you're looking at, right? So, I mean, if life is short, then why not try? Why not
Hmm.
try to build something that you really, really love? And I was like, I mean, I really like what I do. So, I mean, the idea of helping somebody, get to where they want to go over the long term is really, really, really exciting for me. When I get those like texts or emails to say like, hey, I just completed this goal or whatever, like that feels like a huge win for me, even though
Yeah.
I didn't do anything, right? I
Yeah.
and I just I love it.
Yeah, I'm the same way. Like we went to a concert the other night. It was the Madison Symphony Orchestra. And I'm
Mm,
always that person that I'm trying not to cry, not because the music is touching or the storyline was really good, but I'm just thinking about all the work and effort that goes
yep.
into productions and that kind of thing. And I'm just so proud of them and happy for them. So I totally get like you see somebody else's success and you're like, I'm there for you. I support it. And it's an incredible feeling. It's so funny.
Well, and something else I've been thinking about like kind of along the same lines is like how many times in my life have I quit when I was 10% away?
Mm,
I was almost there and I just beat myself up, or I was just having negative thoughts, or I was just feeling defeated. So I just gave in. And how close have I been in my life? And like that thoughts too has also upset me a little bit. So I'm like, why not just keep going? Why not try hard?
yeah. And hindsight's 2020, right? Like you turn around
Yep.
and you go, oh man, I was almost there if I just would have stuck with it.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Well, awesome. So, as you've kind of embraced this coaching speaking journey, have there been people who have kind of been naysayers of like, yeah, no, we're not on the same wavelength anymore, and you go do your thing, and I'm just going to be over here?
There have been. I mean, and it's been interesting because like I don't know, in my head, I kind of like chalk it up like, oh, I got somebody else on the haters list, and I didn't think they were going to be there, you know? And a
Yeah.
lot of the time, it's not so much like, what are you doing, Jacob? I can't believe you did this thing. Like, why are you starting a business? Like, what's the matter with you, right? It's not like that, right? A
Yeah.
lot of time, it's just little things that they say, and it's like, oh, I see, I see you don't really see what I'm driving towards,
Hmm.
and honestly, like the way that I thought about it is like that's more a reflection of them than it is a reflection of me. Because if they saw how hard I was working, they would absolutely believe what I was doing. But they can't see. They can't see that I'm in here grinding day after day. But they don't believe that they could do it. So why could I?
Yeah. I think that's really important to hear because so many of us get stuck on what other people think of us. And to
Hmm.
believe so strongly in yourself, you're definitely going to lose some people and maybe some relationships that you thought were close. And then as you start to really push forward and do great things for yourself, maybe it's not so close. And like you said, it's not a reflection on you because you're working hard, you're grinding it out, you're getting it done. And the people that don't see that are typically the people that don't believe in you or that you're going to achieve anything great. But that's not the truth.
Well, and they also don't believe in themselves.
Yeah.
There's like a British comedian, Jimmy Carr, that I really like. It's so funny. I think a lot of comedians are much deeper and more philosophical than we give them credit for, just based on
Oh
like
yeah.
their jokes and their acts, right? But he says something I loved. One of his quotes was, "People are jealous of what you have, not how you got it." Meaning that
Mm,
they want to have the incredible business, they want to have like the great house, they want to have the great family or whatever, right? But they don't want to work for it. Not that way
mhm.
you did.
So, for clients that you've worked with that maybe have a hard time figuring out like who they are, what they want to do, and embracing that authentic side of themselves and really pursuing their vision and making it come to life, how have you kind of typically worked with those people? And have you had really good success stories or have you seen some really good changes?
So I mean, I think the biggest thing with folks like that is you need to experiment. You gotta get out of the house and try a little bit. And people get caught up as like, oh, I have to know what my passion is, and that's if I don't know what my passion is, and how can I know what it is I can do? And I'm like, well, how can you find your passion if you haven't tried anything, if you haven't done anything?
Yeah.
I mean, when I was in high school and early on in college, I was cutting meat at the meat department at a Hy-Vee. And it was a job, get food on the table, whatever, but it's not my passion. And how could I ever know that if I hadn't tried it?
Right.
Right. I mean, finding little things to try is really, really important, and not shooting for perfect, but just so you can experience it a little bit. I mean, just do it as best as you can, and things will come along. I mean, I had a client early on, in my coaching business, who was looking into blogging, blogging
Mhm.
on like on the outdoors and on baking. That was kind of her thing. Um, but like the more they got into it, they realized that while they love those things, they don't love writing about those things. And again, until you try something, because I mean, like the world is really open to us anymore, especially in the modern age with computers and the internet and everything else. So, I mean,
Mhm.
just get out, try some things, watch some videos, and just give it a shot. And if it doesn't work out, then who cares? Who cares?
Yeah. We get stuck too on I was working with a client one time and they were saying in the office, people are saying, "Oh, put your 5-year plan together." And that was
Hmm.
really intimidating. And we have this vision and we get asked all the time, "Where do you see yourself in 5, 10 years?" I don't know. I don't know where I see myself tomorrow.
Right.
So getting out, having that experimental attitude and saying, okay, what's one next step that I could take towards this, and not necessarily what's my commitment for the next 2 years going to look like and what's the end result. It's how can I move from a one on the scale to a two.
Yeah. Well, and like I think it's common for people to get intimidated, like, what's your 5-year plan? What's your 10-year plan? And there's nothing wrong with having those kind of plans, but nothing says that any of that's set in stone.
Hardly
So,
ever.
right. Mostly never. And most of the time, people asking for that are companies that just want to see if you're going to be around in 5 years, right?
Right, right.
So, I mean, give it something if you want to throw some things down, and if it doesn't work, then it doesn't work, and you can put something else in your another 5-year plan. Like that's fine.
Yeah, I love the idea of flexibility because no two people are going to have the same path. So even if
Mm,
somebody has already done the thing, you're not going to take those exact same steps to get there. And life is going to happen. You're going to need to take a sick day or something, or you're going on vacation, or some weird other crazy thing happens. And so nothing we ever do is really going to be that linear. So even to have that plan, it's great to shoot for the goal, but also knowing you're going to need flexibility and that goal may shift over time.
yeah. Well, and giving yourself the grace to let it be flexible.
Yeah. Yep. I know so many people who are like, no, this is what I said I'm going to do. And so I'm going to do it. And I have to find a way to make it work. And it's like in a video game. I play a lot of video games. But if you get to a level and you're just constantly beating your head against the wall, you weren't meant to be in that place at that time. So instead of just forcing it to try to make it work, what are some other resources that you might need? Or, what's a different area that you could pursue that would be helpful?
Yeah. Yeah. And just like finding that incremental growth, that's the most important piece.
Mm-hmm. So, as we're talking about authenticity and embracing the journey and being flexible, a lot of that requires also being vulnerable. And I know
Hmm.
that's really hard for a lot of people. So, I'm curious what your experience has been with that.
Yeah. So, yeah, this is kind of a passionate topic for me.
Great.
So I'll say anybody, I don't know if you're familiar with it. There's a personality test out there called the Enneagram.
Oh,
I
yep.
mean, it's similar to a lot of them, but for anybody that knows about it, I'm an 8, meaning that typically I'm very direct. I will, I'll like I'm not going to give you a lot of the fluff, and I just want like the quick bullet points, and then we can be done, right? That also means that I'm not typically willing to be the most vulnerable all the time. But
Mm,
something that has stuck with me for 4 or 5 years now, I had a sales training a while back, and they said that vulnerability is your strength a lot of the time. So just being willing, you don't have to, not everybody deserves every piece of you all the time, but some people do. So just being willing to give that away is really important. Expect nothing back for me has been really, really key. And again, it's their reaction doesn't define how I perceive myself. Meaning that if I am vulnerable with somebody about, whatever it is I'm experiencing, and they're like, oh, well, that's nothing compared to what I'm going through. Like that's a reflection of them and not a reflection of me. Meaning that
yeah.
maybe I shouldn't be as vulnerable with this person, at least as of right now, and I can
Hmm.
find some other people to talk to.
Yeah, I'm glad that you said maybe I shouldn't be vulnerable with this person right now, because a lot of times when we get those types of reactions, we shut ourselves down to everybody and not just the
Hmm.
one person we had that experience with. And that happens a lot of times with romantic relationships too. And I think it
Yes.
just closes us off to just such a beautiful experience of the world, because you're like, nope, not happening. Nope, closing doors. Nope, I'm going to shut myself in. And that's really hard. How do you find ways to stay open with other people, even though some people have said, I'm maybe not the best person to connect with?
So I'm typically pretty slow moving, at least personally. So I mean, I like to get to know somebody, I like to joke around with them. And then I like to, I mean, I don't know, I think it's interesting. Like when I interact with people, like I like to joke around, have a good time, but that's really kind of just a thin outer veneer of what I
Mm-hmm.
am. And usually, when things get quiet and we're listening to music or, maybe we have a whiskey or something, that's when, kind of my deeper thoughts come out. And it's been really easy for me to notice that when I'm starting to talk about these more, kind of heady topics like we're talking about today, and somebody's just like, oh, yeah, that usually tells me that, oh, okay, well, we can't talk about this, these hypothetical things and
Yeah.
this larger philosophy. So if I'm struggling with something, maybe they'll be there, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they'll know what to do.
Yeah. That's huge, because so many people, I've had several people in my life. I go to them, I start talking. They presume that they know what I'm talking about, and they answer a question that I never asked. And
Yeah.
so I'm like, okay, well, I can't go to that person because they're not actually going to be with me, like Simon Sinek was saying, like they're not going to be with me in the mud, in the trenches. They're just going to observe from afar and go, oh, what's going on?
Well, and a lot of the time too, I've noticed that I just need to get stuff out. I just need to get it off my chest, and I don't need you to fix it or help me fix it because it's probably
Yeah.
not anything that needs to be fixed even necessarily. It's just a crappy day or just whatever it was. And once I get it out, then usually I'm good. The journaling's been great for that.
Yeah, I'm so glad you said that, because a lot of people say that's a female thing. Women just want to be heard. They don't want you to fix it. But I find that it's kind of the same thing, because people say, "Oh, guys are always the fixers," but I
Mhm.
also have a very strong need to fix when somebody comes with a problem, and it's a very strong like, no, wait, just listen, ask some clarifying questions, see what's going on. So I think it kind of goes both ways. I don't think it's tied to any specific gender. So I'm really happy to hear you say, like, you know what, I just need to get off my chest and then I can move on with my life. Please don't fix it. I
Yeah,
think
well, and
that's
like,
just
and
something
what's
universal.
helped me is again being direct. It's like, hey, I don't need you to fix this. I just need to tell you, and you can say nothing about it. Like, that's fine. I just need to tell
Yeah,
you that I can
yeah.
then I can be done with it.
I wish more people would do that. Like, hey, here's what I need from you. Or for the other person to ask, cool, that's great. Do you need me to listen? Do you need me to support? Do you need me to troubleshoot? Like,
Well,
what do
and I mean that's where like the active listening comes in. It's
you Yeah.
like, what is this person really asking? Like, has this
Mm,
person asked me for advice? A lot of times they're not asking me for advice. Like I might have some, but
right.
they didn't ask me for it, so that's okay. They just wanted to talk it out. Now they're okay. And now they're probably gonna go do, they're probably gonna go do it the wrong way, but that's all right. So
Yeah, another thing I've realized too is like, just because you didn't answer their question doesn't mean that the question didn't get answered.
Mhm.
Like if I ask you a question and you start talking and you're reflecting and doing all this stuff, you might find the answer just in your own talking, but it's maybe not because I asked you anything in particular. Like you didn't ever actually answer my question, but you got to the answer that you needed.
Yeah, well, I mean, a lot of the time too, for me personally, like I'm just like in an emotional place and I'm just dealing with my emotions, and emotions can lie to us. So I just need to get that done and get that dealt with, and then now I'm fine. Now I can move on and deal with whatever the thing is.
Yeah. You also talk a lot about the importance of habits. So earlier we were talking about, 5 minutes a day on the piano or 10 minutes a day reading a book, and having those small little habits every day has been really important for you. And I'm
Mhm.
curious, how you figured that out for yourself and how that's been really helpful to you and to your clients.
So for me personally, like I said, I'm very organized and I like everything in a certain place. I mean, my desk right now is super messy, but I know where everything is, right? So
Yeah.
what's helped me a ton on the habit side is so I use a habits app and it's called Habits, which is crazy, right?
Perfect.
But I'm a big like I like to-do lists a lot. And I love like I'm the kind of weirdo that I'll like put a to-do list together, then I'll do something else, get that done, but I'll put it on the to-do list just so I can cross it off, right? Like I
Yep.
like doing that. I get a lot of satisfaction from that. Um, but putting like together things that are important to me to make sure that I want to get them done. And I mean, I'm sure everybody's heard about it. I mean, Atomic Habits, great, I mean, incredible book that will, I mean, really help you dive into the psychology of really what's happening. But building those, sequences in place to where like, all right, I get up, then I like for me personally, I get up, I feed the dog, I spend a little time in the bathroom, I get stuff like done on my phone, like I'll do a little bit of reading, like in the Bible. I'll do like my daily gratitude stuff, and then usually I will practice reading music, and then I'll go to the gym or get breakfast or whatever it is that I'm doing. Um, what also really, really helps is understanding the difference between like habits and tasks.
Mm,
So, habit, like truly defined habit, is like something that you do automatically,
mhm,
meaning that you, like, for example, like you walk in the house, you take your coat off, right? That's a habit. And then when you walk in and you don't have a coat on, you feel weird because like, what am I doing? What am I missing with my shirt, right? But a task is maybe something that you don't do every single day, but you want to make sure that it's getting done. Like for me personally, I love it's an app called Todoist. I've used it for years. And I'm also a really big fan of time blocking. So like
mhm.
actually sitting down with your calendar every day or every week or whatever works makes sense for you and saying, all right, so I'm gonna, over this set of time, I'm gonna get this done, and I'm gonna get this done. And actually going through and penciling it out. I mean, it's been hugely helpful for me. One of my favorite tips that I got from a training a while back is chaos time, meaning that when something happens and like your hair's on fire and there's like, everybody else's hair is on fire and you got to like deal with whatever that thing is, you actually schedule in half an hour or an hour into your day to deal with whatever those random things are. And then if they don't come up, then you just have extra time to get something else done.
Yeah, I think that's really important to have that time because there's oftentimes these little interruptions that happen on a regular enough basis, and we don't
Mhm.
make the space to plan for them. So I love the
Yep.
idea of just planning things are going to happen that are not on the schedule, and I need to set time aside to be able to deal with those.
Yeah, because otherwise you're gonna, I mean, whatever you don't get done because of the chaos thing, you just push till tomorrow.
Right.
And that pushes two things more back. And then then by the end of the week, you need like a whole extra day to get stuff done. Like that's it's not good for anybody.
Yeah, if we can make that eighth day happen, I think that would
Right.
be really helpful for a lot of
Yeah, get
people.
that put together.
Yeah, I have such a hard time with time blocking that
Mm.
I Chat GPT and I are best friends. And
Yeah.
so I asked Chat GPT one day, I was like, hey, time blocking doesn't really work for me. It works for a lot of people, and that's fantastic. And I'm very happy for you. Uh, but for me, it's almost like I have to think about the values that are attached to the things that I'm doing because
Mm.
that's what will motivate me. I am not an externally motivated person at all. If there's a calendar or a person telling me what I have to do and when I have to do it, I'm not really interested. But if it's something that lights me up and I'm really motivated to do, it's easy for me to spend hours on it without any problem. So it's really weird, this juxtaposition of I need to make sure that I have the time for that with the other things I have going on. So calendaring is really important. But depending on what's useful for you, maybe it is time blocking and saying, okay, I said at 6 p.m. I have to do this thing. So I'm going to be there at 6 p.m. Whereas for other people, it might be I need to make sure that I have time to get at least two things on my list done today. And I'm going to prioritize by what's most important to me.
Yeah. I love that.
It's been a journey for sure. It's not perfect by any stretch, but nothing ever
Yeah.
is, I think. That's awesome. Uh, Fantastic. Well, I am super grateful for your time today. Is there any other last minute tips, tricks, or advice for people who are chasing their dreams? They have a big vision, they want to go after it, but maybe they're a little scared to, maybe they're worried that people won't like them and it'll be that identity threat, or maybe they're just not really sure what is the next step. What advice would you give them?
Um, I mean, this is gonna sound, I mean, kind of trite, I guess, but do it
We love
anyway.
it.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, do it anyway. Like if you're scared, you're worried that people are gonna perceive you a certain way, screw it, do it anyway. Like try it, and if it doesn't work, then that's okay. I mean, the life is long, and you get all the time in the world to try all kinds of things, but you have to try them. I mean, you
Mhm.
can't just be sitting at home watching another documentary, watching another video about cooking, whatever, or about reading another book, or trying to take another class. You have to get out and do it. Action, even if it's an imperfect action, is better than no action at all. And so many people take no action at all.
Yeah, it's hard when you're learning about a skill because it's really easy to watch a video on something or read a book on something and go, "Oh yeah, that makes perfect sense. I could totally do that." But getting in there and doing it is just such a different teacher of skills in life and all of that.
Yeah, I mean that's when you start developing grit. And I mean, like, grit is, I think, absolutely important for all of this stuff that we're talking about. If you don't have grit, you can develop it, but you just have to kind of force it a little bit. Like there's no real tried and true, here's how to build grit. You just have to get out and do it.
Yeah, I think, part of the reason there's no clear path is it's going to look different for every person depending
Yep.
on where they're at and what they're trying to do. So, I appreciate you throwing that in there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Well, if you guys want to learn more about Jacob Hicks and his amazing work, you can check him out at jacobhickscoach.com. His website is beautiful, it's clean, it's stunning, and he upkeeps it himself. What an accomplishment.
Doing my best, doing my best.
Awesome. Well, Jacob, thank you so much for being here today. I am so excited for everyone to hear all of the amazing wisdom that you have shared. And yeah, I definitely appreciate you being here.
Oh yeah, thank you so much for having me on. It's been great. Love it.
Awesome. All right, guys. Well, we will see you in the next episode. If you have anybody that you think should be on this show, absolutely let me know and I'd be happy to have them. Otherwise, I will have a link to Jacob's website in the description. So definitely go check him out and we'll see you next time.